The Philosopher Solidonius. Translated to English by Mitko Janeski, from hand-written French book. The first who has well tuned the four elements favored by God and cherished by nature. So says this philosopher. God and nature work together for the perfection of our work. If one is not born as creator and master of all things, the other must enter into it so much in agreement with itself that there should be no opposition nor on the part of the contrary qualities of the four elements nor moreover, and it is almost as if a man and a woman by the call to a love come to join together by a sweet effect of this same love. It seems that in this conjunction there is nothing lacking of what a cause needs to produce its effect, but the difference of temperaments in the one is quick and the other slow causes nature to give no consent to action and to remain nothing. It is the same with our work. I therefore say that he who reads the authors and who desires to know something must make an effort to understand this work. Here is the content. Listen, Adam. It's me talking to you. I have something important to tell you. You're forced to get into the bath with me. You know how much I've affected you. Do not ignore that you must pass by me before going there. So I'm approaching you with very sharp features, that I direct straight to your heart, and when I will be there, and that I will have struck at the goal, it is then that you will notice my force and my violence, and that you will cry out, "Woe to me, miserable! I am drilled to the quick. I am heartbroken, once again woe to me, since I have to be in concert and in understanding with the author of my ills." It is therefore at this dominating hour of the elements that one asks where this stone and this elixir which has this marvelous tincture come from. It can only be drawn from the works of philosophy, which are sulfur and mercury, not the vulgar ones, for it is neither natural sulfur or common mercury which can produce virtue by themselves, but it is that of the philosophers which is the medicine by which all metallic bodies are purged of their leprosy and intimacy. But in order that the thing be in its perfection, and if need be that the sun and the moon put their hands in it, and that one and the other contribute to it as the most interested and vile parts in the thing, for the more the things are natural, the more advantageous they are. This is why you, who want to deepen our science, learn that the common, vulgar mercury, formless and impure as it is, should not be excluded from our work, because in it is found all that there is more natural and which serves a lot for the perfection of the work. Because if you understand the dual nature well, you can guarantee yourself a happy ending to your work. And it will happen if you know how to properly combine the first fire with the earth's humidity. However, when you combine them, you must be careful that there is no opposition and that they are mixed in such a ratio that of the two, it is only one matter, and so much in agreement with each other that there can never be born any contrariety there. Although our sulfur and mercury have extraneous parts, they won't have any until they can be in the bath with a little more fire. Although you need a good fire, the bath shouldn't be bubbling with it. Instead, manage the fire so that they can separate and disappear. Then, by truly distilling and sublimating the philosophers, you can change their nature. Thus the pure from the impure will be separated, then crush little by little, put it back in its good, give it a body and heat again. Learn that this is all to do and notice. If assistance with the patient's relief was required in the future, it would have to come from the goodness of a single thing rather than the multiplicity and variety that our art does not consist of, because there is only one true medicine, and that is what the entire piece of work should be made up of. I'm not saying there aren't things that help, by which it is perfected, because we don't add anything essential except what goes into the preparation in the first place. The rest, the nature and the first matter of our work, contain it in itself, and it is in it and by it that everything necessary consists. Despite being encircled by clouds and darkness, it is well known and simple to locate because it is present everywhere. It doesn't look well and instead comes off as being very unclean, unimportant, and giving of itself without expecting anything in return. To put it simply, it is not respected. It should be highlighted that in order for it to have worth, art must give it a body so that its nature emerges. In order to achieve this, it must be fermented. Here's an illustration. She broke out of all of her prisons and managed to escape despite the man's best efforts to keep her in check. Nevertheless, someone who was familiar with her character found her to be straightforward, modest, and sincere, because he suggested stripping off all of her clothing and selling her bare as her hand, and it turns out as he had said. After all, what did she have that she shouldn't have had? It was through this that she was reduced to obedience, and it was necessary for her pain and sin to deliver her body to be buried alive for 40 days, so that it could be born rotten like wheat, the seed, the root, and the germ, because if it must engender something, it can only do so through putrefaction, which causes it to grow roots. This is the only way to determine the strength of the seed. It is the same with wheat grain. It falls to the ground, putrefies, dies, and then bears fruit, which it will not do if left alone. The master claims that there cannot be generation without putrefaction for this reason. So let each approach be absorbed for as long it takes. As a result, neither the human being or the grain of wheat can generate anything without the presence of substance in the tool, the soil without the grain, and the father without the mother. And if one wants to witness the fruit of one and the other, it is essential that everything putrefies completely at work, as everything that is reduced to the initial matter is comparable to an open house where anybody is welcome to enter and exit. This is why, according to the philosopher, water is generated from ice, assuming a near heat, because water is water before becoming ice, and it is true that ice and snow are formed from water known to their natural kind. The man and woman are descended from Eve, the first mother of the two sexes, because the first Eve, the first of the women, was endowed with very beautiful qualities that always surpassed those that followed. It was because of this first woman that things were as abundant in them as they were in their source. And it is the first philosophical spouse, it is easily opened, as being the parent sulfur of a thing of the nature of our mercury, thus water for water. This is why the rosary says dissolve our mercury and it will dissolve clear like rock water, and it is true to say that the first origin of metals is putrefaction or manure. After that the art made by us a beautiful dye, there is no fountain water so clear when once art and nature concur to reduce it to a metallic property. It is then that she has the strength to convert the imperfect into the perfect. One cannot say everything here, and it is not expedient to give everything to be understood. I therefore said that the essential of the work of the philosophers was drawn from natural mercury converted into water or sulfur, which must be divided into 2 or 3 equal parts like a veritable fountain of the philosophers, which is the source of all things. It is then that you will find pure and clean spirits there, but sulfur is used in conjunction with the moon, which is friendly to it. And it is also necessary that the fat of the vine be enclosed and put in its bed during the month of the philosophers. In distillation, it appears there as a sweat. In sublimation the spirit strives to ascend, but is compelled to descend. It is made of water, and it turns again into water, it becomes like a black cloud and appears like water and a skin on top of it as if it had been added to it. But it's going slowly. Then it must thicken after that, putrefy and die, and also it must be put in the bottom of the water, because everything must die with regard to its nature to bear fruit. It is always necessary to proceed in the same way and according to the order of the elements until this operation dries and this natural humidity is completely consumed. It is of all the humidity that which requires the longest time to cook, and we must not complain about the length of time, so that what is at the top finally takes the lowest place and that the lower becomes superior and vice versa, and until the earth becomes very dry and separates from the element of water, which is done very slowly and successively and little by little, the more time employed in it the better. It is thus the matter of nature decreases and takes on another more vegetative life. At the end add and stir the whole body so much that it turns black. This is done so that what is hidden appears. And also by the mortification of our natural mercury, which is changed into water, and this dead water takes another form, which is done by an artificial and well-managed distillation, by putrefaction, calcination, sublimation and by fixation, it is coagulated and made fixed. This happens naturally and by succession of time. This is why the philosopher says that he who can reveal what is hidden and who can hide what appears, that one says he can boast of having struck at the goal and of having caught the end of the work. It is then that this tender and inconstant fixation of softness that it was for the present becomes hard, and it is from there that the terrestrial and the dry derive. Thus, the change is made from one nature to another by means of the same heat, it takes the form and space of our black sulfur, and from there come this man and this woman who have nothing more than a nature. So receive with great gratitude from the hands of God this black earth like the head of a raven that one would have liked to have flattened. Take 2 parts with 1 part of our water. Make the conjunction of the man and his own wife, and that the whole is very exactly mixed, that one puts them in their bed, that one takes care to contain them well during 1 month, thus little by little this ground will appear. Then remove it, grind it, soak it with the virgin's milk as before, put it back as before, do this 4 times and more if necessary until this blackness can give birth to whiteness. Previously several colors will appear to you like that of the peacock's tail. Here is the perfect transmutation in all terms, and it is necessary that all the figures appear there until this beautiful whiteness can be seen like a king dressed in white. For then you have this excellent earth of stone, it is cooked and clean for the work of the philosophers, which must be reserved for fermenting in white and for dyeing all metals in the moon. Take then for this white which is still earth and of your matter 3 parts, keep your minds beforehand, 1 part of lime of the moon and 1½ or 2 parts. Let this be put in his bed and be done in such a way that coming out of this darkness he whitens until the sulfur of the ferment is entirely consumed. This being done, he will convert all metals into luna, white earth, which is the body and the ferment of the souls, which is the very soul which gives it life. The sulfur in truth is the water, and the spirits are the means to achieve this. For it has been said in speaking of the first matter that Mercury is in the beginning water. You have this king dressed in white, you have the work of the philosophers, and it must be fermented white as you have heard. So he will hold everything in moon. If you are not happy and wanted to dye it in soul, then divide this stone of the philosophers, keep a part white until the ferment is in its perfection and it is converted into this white stone, and you will have the white multiplication. The rest of this white stone, put it in a new curvature, and as you want to have it yellow, put it on a stove and gradually increase the fire, until by the force of this fire, our stone white turns red like coral. We reduce like sulfur. Then remove this material from the vessel and take it in 3 parts. You will add 1½ of very pure gold flakes to it, you will also add 2 parts of our water. Mix these 3 things well together and put it all back in the curb, give it back its natural heat, do it as before and more often will be the best, always remix with the water you have reserved, separate, put, join, and always give the fire by degrees more and more until the red appears like sulfur or hematite stone and even redder. Then you will have the stone of the philosophers which tints everything in gold. To God alone praise and glory. The End.